What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Angry Spud. In today's Spud Reacts, Felicia is going to teach us 6 things that are forbidden in Germany. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Now, law number 1, it's illegal to run out of fuel on the Autobahn. As most of you probably know, the Autobahn is Germany's interstate system. If you want to learn more about it, you can check out these 2 videos. And when it comes to driving, there are indeed a lot of regulations that you have to follow as a driver in Germany. Like your car has to pass inspections every 2 years, called TÜV. Otherwise, you're not allowed to drive on the streets. You also have to have certain equipment, like a first aid kit and warning vests in your car. And in the winter, it's mandatory to have winter tires on your car. And
oh, wow.
Yes.
Hold on. So a lot of that makes sense. We have, depending on the state, we have inspections too. So I know like New York, you have to do it and whatnot. And then there's some states like California, you have to do like an emissions thing like on your vehicle. But as far as like having the vest, the med kit and all that type of stuff in your car, I don't think you have to do that. So that's kind of crazy, but also really smart at the same time.
You're also obligated to always have enough gas in your tank as a driver, and if you don't and actually run out of gas on the Autobahn, you can be fined and might have to pay 25 up to 120 euros, since this is considered preventable. And in general, it's also illegal to stop or park on the Autobahn, even in the emergency lane. I mean, unless your vehicle is actually breaking down, but even then, you won't see a lot of cars just left there on the side of the Autobahn. Whereas in the US, you regularly see broken down vehicles on the side of the interstate that were just basically parked there.
And you just put like, I don't know, like a shirt or like just some cloth out the window. And then that lets people know that you're going to come back and actually get the vehicle. But I think it's crazy too. You shouldn't run out of gas on the Autobahn, because can't you go as fast as you want? That's like extremely dangerous. You could just do that. You can't do that here. There's actually speed limits. But there, I don't think they have a speed limit on the Autobahn.
Course, since most places in the US don't use radar traps to enforce speed limits, but have cops pull people over instead, you'll often also see a car that was pulled over and also a cop car behind it in the emergency lane as well. On the German Autobahn, that would actually be considered jeopardizing the road safety, especially since on many parts of the Autobahn, there is no speed limit, so people are going crazy fast. Fun fact.
So some parts do have a speed limit. I did not know that. That's cool.
Apparently, this also became illegal in a small town here in Ohio earlier this year, in Youngstown, which is close to Cleveland, so don't do it there either. Number 2, it's not allowed to name your baby Superman. Now, this one isn't technically a law, and you won't get fined for this, but fact is, and this is usually hard to believe for Americans, that in Germany, you can't just give your baby any name you want. It'll have to be approved by the local Standesamt, like the civil registration office, and there are rules as to what you can and can't name your kid. I mean, of course there are rules for that. It's Germany. We pretty much have a rule for everything. Now, whether the name you picked for your baby will be approved or not depends on different things, such as whether it's a name that actually exists, whether it'll be a reason for bullying later on in the child's life, and sometimes they also don't accept names that aren't obviously a female or a male name, which this last one is kind of ridiculous if you ask me. Here are just some examples of names that have been rejected before. Waldmeister, Junge, which just means boy, Rosenherz, so rose heart, Bierstube, so kind of like a beer pub, Satan, or Satan in German, McDonald's, Superman, Pain, Gucci, Whiskey, or the last names of politicians like Schröder, which was Germany's chancellor before Merkel, or Lenin. And since I already see all these question marks pop up in your guys' eyes, no, you won't be able to call your kid Hitler either, even though the first name Adolf is technically allowed. These rules are one of the reasons why you won't find a lot of crazy first names in Germany, and also why Germans are often very fascinated by what American celebrities name their kids.
That is very true.
3, deny the Holocaust. Now, this one doesn't necessarily fit into a list of crazy or funny laws, because I think it's neither of those. However, many people from outside of Germany and outside of Europe aren't aware of this and find it a very interesting law when they first hear about it. It's illegal in Germany to deny the Holocaust. So you can't just say that the crimes of the Holocaust didn't happen. If you do, you can either get fined for it, or you can actually get prison time of up to 5 years.
Holy, so I think it was a long time ago I heard about this law, but I didn't know if it was actually enforceable, like if people actually got in trouble for it. I did not know you couldn't say, or even I thought if you do the salute or something like that, you can get in trouble. So like if a tourist goes over there and does something like that, they're probably going to get fined or thrown in jail. That's kind of crazy, but that's one of those things you got to know the laws before you go to another country. I mean, ignorance is not an excuse.
Read many comments on the internet saying that this indicates that Germany doesn't have freedom of speech. Well, that's not true. We do have freedom of speech, Meinungsfreiheit, as a fundamental right in Germany. However, freedom of speech can be limited by other general laws, by provisions for the protection of young persons, Jugendschutzgesetz, and another person's right to personal honor. Those general laws, which are like the first example of what can limit your freedom of speech, cannot be laws that just discriminate against one specific opinion. They have to be neutral and they have to protect another legal right. In this case, the right that they're protecting is the dignity of the Holocaust victims and their families, which is something that we value very, very highly in Germany, because after World War II, when the Federal Republic of Germany was founded, the very first paragraph of our constitution, the Grundgesetz, became human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. So that's why denying the Holocaust is illegal in Germany, even though we do have freedom of speech, and it's also illegal in 16 other countries. Number 4, it's forbidden to mow the lawn on Sundays
I did know this
or
one.
play piano at midnight.
You can't make
Germans
noise.
like
Yep.
silence. This is something you'll notice if you're ever in Germany, especially if you come from a louder culture like the American one. Germans tend to speak pretty quietly, especially in public. And we also appreciate having some peace and quiet at home, which is why there are tons of laws and regulations about how much noise you're allowed to make and when. Sundays and public holidays have actually been defined as rest periods, Ruhezeiten, for the whole day, which means that you're not allowed to make loud noises that could disturb others. This includes mowing your lawn or using a drilling machine, for example. So if you were trying to do some renovations at home, not on Sundays. This also applies to nighttime rest periods, which usually start at 8 p.m., and sometimes even to lunch hours. The rules for the lunch hours usually vary, though, depending on where in Germany you live, and some rules will even be made by the house
there we go.
management of your apartment building.
I was wondering, so if you go to a specific city, it's not across the board, it's all the same. So I wonder what's the stipulation as to, why they set it at that time. Is that just like a local thing to where like majority of people said, hey, I want at 8 p.m., I want this to start then? Or did board members come up with it? Is it just random by city? I don't know. I wonder how they come up with that.
The Federal High Court of Justice has even ruled that playing an instrument in rental apartments is only allowed at certain times.
I want to try to say this word. Das Bundesverfassungsgericht. Oh, that was hard. Bundesverfassungsgericht. I don't know.
That playing an instrument in rental apartments is only allowed at certain times, from 8 a.m. to noon and from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. And even then, you can only practice for a certain amount of time. Piano players only get up to 2 hours per day, and drummers, for example, get 45 minutes in the summer and 90 minutes in the winter.
Holy, you guys better, if you're practicing an instrument, you better get on it. There's no time to, start scrolling, play a little bit, start scrolling again. You better really be on it, on your P's and Q's.
Yes, German laws are very specific. Number 5, it's not allowed to keep urns at home. This topic does really come up a lot in conversations in everyday life, fortunately, but the Germans among you may have wondered about this when watching American movies before, because in the US, it's pretty common that after a loved one dies, you take the urn home with you. I've definitely seen this in movies and shows before where either it's part of a comedic moment because someone doesn't realize that it's an urn, or, of course, it's part of a drama. Well, that's something that you won't ever see in Germany because we have a law called Friedhofszwang, cemetery compulsion, that says that any mortal remains have to be buried at a cemetery or alternatively, after a cremation, you can have a sea burial in Germany as well. Now, in the past few years, the rules have been lifted a little in different states. In Bremen, for example, it's now allowed to spread ashes on privately owned property, but you're still not allowed to take the urn home with you. In general, there's pretty big differences when it comes to funerals and cemeteries in Germany and the US. I've actually had the topic on my list for a while, so let me know if you'd want me to talk about that more in depth at some point. And number 6, you'll be punished for saying du to a cop. Okay,
Du.
those of you who speak German probably understand this
saying
law
you?
right away, but for everyone
Yeah, I think it's like rude, because isn't du just you?
else, du is the German word for you. Now, why would that be a problem if you use that with a cop?
It's disrespectful.
Because in German, just like in other languages like French or Spanish, we have a formal and an informal address. So depending on what relationship you have with the person you're talking to, you'll use a different pronoun and also a different grammar structure when you talk to them. Du is the informal pronoun for you, while capital Z is the formal one. The formal one is usually used with people who are significantly older, strangers, people of authority, or just people that you have a professional relationship with. It really depends on the specific situation, but if it's not a child or someone you're close with, you usually don't use the informal address with them until you two allow each other to do so. Now, since police are people of authority and you speak to them in a professional context, you use the formal address with them,
Z.
And if you don't, and use du with them instead, that can actually be viewed as insulting an official, Beamtenbeleidigung, because it's disrespectful.
Oh my gosh. Beamtbeleidigung. Beamtbeleidigung. Okay.
And you may have to pay 600 euros for it.
Jeez.
The actual fines are decided on a case-to-case basis, but this is one number I found. I also found that showing a cop the finger gets you up to 4,000 euros. Now, technically...
So you can do that here. You can flick off a cop and do all that type of stuff. You yell out the window, generally, and not really get in trouble for it because it's not illegal because of freedom of speech.
Insulting an official is just based on the general laws of not insulting others. There's no extra laws just about insulting officials, but I would assume that police enforce this much more than regular people do, so you should definitely be careful here. But also, I'm pretty sure that they would only enforce it if you obviously do it on purpose, and if they can tell that you're a non-native speaker and try to speak German with them and just make an honest mistake, I'm sure it's not a big deal.
So I know in the US we have several laws too that are very weird like that, especially in those small little towns. They just haven't changed them or updated the book. So I'm not sure. I haven't heard some in a very, very, very long time, but I know they're still there. But as expected, I didn't think a lot of these rules were too much to ask for, like not running out of gas, being prepared basically, not being too noisy, not being rude to officials. I think those ones I actually like, especially since I was a cop before. I like the one to where like you can't treat, a person in a professional capacity, with disrespect. I like that one. The weird one to me was the urn. I think, having a family member, die and then cremated, I think you should be able to take that home with you because it's like literally your possession. It's not like, the government owns that person. It's something, I think that's like a sentimental thing. So, but I really enjoyed this. I want to see more rules because I know Germany probably has a lot more, but I enjoyed this, and that's all I have for this video. So I'll see you in the next one.